there's the social bubble of Bitcoin, which you also talk about in the book, and which Liz and I have experienced firsthand. We went to Bitcoin Miami and did a little documentary there.
They
It's funny
tried
you're
to
talking about.
proselytize us. They tried to turn us away from Jesus Christ and toward
That's right.
our Lord and
Yeah, and
Savior Satoshi.
yeah, and it's funny because, you talk about the suits show up during the boom cycles, then they disappear. When we were there, it was sort of on a down cycle, and some of the hardcore people were like, "Oh, we're grateful that they're all just investing in AI now," because that was the new bubble then, because now we can we can build more cheaply on top of Bitcoin or whatever. And what we noticed though was that there was definitely a strong, almost like a schism between different sects of Bitcoiners. There's famously the Bitcoin maximalists. There was even a gallery of Bitcoin artwork. I'm going to play just a short clip from our documentary to show people what we're talking about, and then I'd love for you to comment on what it means that there's like a quasi religion at the core of Bitcoin.
Walking around the conference, all of the elements of the Bitcoiners' creed were on full display, which Nick Carter says has turned into a religion. It has its own heroes, icons, doctrines, saints, and heretics. Most of the religious imagery present at the conference was shrouded in irony, but as with so much of digital life, it was hard to tell where the joke ended. Ronald Reagan once courted the religious right, but in 2023, a parade of once and future presidential contenders made the trek down to Miami to pander to the Bitcoiners. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard showed up.
Once we give up our economic autonomy, we give up our freedom.
Along with long-shot presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy.
Freedom of speech and freedom of money are two sides of the same coin.
So, yeah, what is the value of having those true believers or that social bubble that is in terms of bootstrapping progress?
Yeah, so they're like it's convenient that we use the term filter bubble to describe a bunch of people who are in an echo
Yeah.
chamber where you only encounter people who share that opinion because it is a kind of bubble, and what it does is it ratchets up how seriously people take these ideas. And that's very much for better or for worse. And you can see like a lot of political movements start with this group of people who completely isolate themselves online and will only talk to people who completely agree with them. And then they just get more and more and more extreme. And it feels like in my lifetime, various strains of libertarianism have gone through this many, many times in many different directions, and certainly there's a lot of this on the progressive side as well. And you can see this in politics with a lot of you can see it in like conservative politics with people who are really, really, really MAGA in a way that does not entirely comport with facts on the ground. And so yeah, it is just part of human nature. But if the thing that unites your group is something where you are actually onto something, then you do want people to take a little bit farther because you are early in this explore exploit process, and you want to explore as far along the lines that you started on as you can. And I think that's a lot of what happened with crypto. Like in the early days, people were talking about this as pretty much the end of central banks, or they were talking about this as this is what money should have been all along. And if we had computers before we had money, we would have had Bitcoin and never had anything else. And I think a lot of that was it turned out not to be true, or if it is true, it's taking a very long time to play out. But it was true that there were a lot of applications that you wouldn't really want to build something like Coinbase if you thought that crypto is this really fun speculative tool and you can use it to buy pizza as a joke, and that's all it does. Or even if you said, hey, crypto is something that allows you to transfer value within different countries, but it doesn't touch the formal banking system, so it's a really good way to sell drugs. Crypto, like Bitcoin at least, is probably the worst way to sell drugs in the
Yeah.
world because the connection between the fiat off and on ramps is very closely monitored,
It's a
and
public
blockchain
ledger.
is always there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's that is not a good use case for it, as it turns out, but it was initially one of the reasons that there was actual underlying demand for Bitcoin. I think there was one year where I think Bitcoin prices had a run up in advance of Burning Man and then collapsed after all of the tech savvy drug users were offline for a few days.
I hate
So
every part of that sentence. Like, that makes me wanna throw my phone in the ocean
I
and,
love
like,
it.
take my child and run to the woods.
I mean, a lot of technologies, look at what people use the internet for really early. Actually, one of the first e-commerce, I think the first known e-commerce transaction was also a drug sale. So um, you also have to reject Amazon and all its works if you're going to take that, if you're going to be sufficiently doctrinaire there. Like it is true, like a lot of these technologies, they attract a really, really weird group of people early on. If you look at say in the Apollo program chapter, we talk about some of the completely insane people who were involved in the early days of rocketry. You had people who were really into the occult and died in rocket explosion accidents in California. And then you have Germans who are just really into hobbyist rocketry, and then they start using slave labor to construct rockets to attack civilians in London during World War II. Like there are very high variance people who get in early to fields that turn out to be really important. And you should always assume, like, especially if you are one of those high variance people, like if you are the weirdo and you have found your tribe of weirdos, you have to get used to the idea that you will over time feel like almost all of your principles have been betrayed.
So,
Go ahead.
oh no, go ahead. Continue.
So when we talked about the kind of religious dimension of Bitcoin, and we do talk a bit about religion throughout the book, which was not intended. Like, it was originally supposed to be more of a straightforward history and finance and economics and technology kind of book, and then we ended up kind of through discussing it as we were writing different chapters, ended up coming on this more abstract and serious dimension. So one of the things that Bitcoin has in common with a lot of very successful religions and a lot of successful institutions that last for a long time is you have a founder who has this incredible impact. The institution could not have existed without this founder. They wrote down a lot of what they believed. They answered a lot of people's questions live before the thing was really a thing, before it was really big and significant. And then they disappear at a conveniently early time. And after that, you have everything they said. That's part of the canon. You know that that is what they believed. And everything beyond that is a matter of interpretation. And this shows up in history. You have things like obviously Christianity and other religions where you have a founding figure. We have we've written down a lot of the things that their followers say that they said, so we know what the canon is, and then we all have to figure out, okay, which part was literal, which part was figurative, and how do we interpret this, and does this mean there's an institution, or does this mean that we're all interacting with the text, etc. Ancient Rome had that too, where they have this legendary figure of Romulus, where he creates, starts building the city, and he has the twin brother who jokingly steps over the wall, and then Romulus murders him, and that tells the Romans that no one is allowed to invade Rome. And then towards the end of the Romulus narrative, there is he's sitting on his throne talking to his advisors. There's a sudden storm, no one can see anything, and then when the storm dissipates, Romulus is gone. And that's really convenient because it means you can't ask Romulus what he thinks after that. You just have to go by what he said, and that it is just it's like a useful design pattern for getting groups of people to agree on things, is that you get the founder is not participating after a while, so you can't leverage your connection to the founder. You can't ask the founder if how things turned out is disappointing. You just have to assume based on what what they said. And so that has created this dynamic where there are different people who are interpreting what Satoshi said, interpreting the white paper, interpreting the original source code, and all the forum comments and emails and things. And then you have schisms where they are taking some of the underlying principles and building something else. And we can be as wildly offensive as we want in our heads and discuss like which real world phenomena correspond to that, taking the religious analogy, etc. But it is a normal pattern of human behavior that you have these founding events, and then things riff on them, and things riff on that, and we all sort of find our cluster of people with whom we agree, and that ends up being a high trust cluster where you can actually extend your ideas further if you are surrounded by people who all think roughly the way you do, but who are also all human beings. Like, we all have slightly different opinions on things and slightly different personalities, and so you want a little bit of randomness in the mix, and that's what you get.
Hey, that was a clip from Just Asking Questions. You can watch another one here or the full episode here. And please subscribe to our brand new channel to get us started off right and be notified when new episodes or clips go up. Thanks for watching.